In this video, I'm going to address what happens when you're doing this work and it's not working, why that might be. This is actually a topic that's come up a couple times in the last few weeks. It actually has not come up frequently, and I hope that's not because people are not asking about it. But in the last couple of weeks, it's come up a couple of times. And so I want to address this, and I want to make it very clear the order of how things need to happen. The order of how things need to happen. Please hear that. The order of how things need to happen is that you have to return to God first. I say it a million times in the videos that you have to go to God. You have to return to Him. Otherwise, you're picking up these books and He hasn't even given you confirmation that this is what He wants you to do. And if that's the case, you're not going to feel confident. You're going to start blaming me and thinking that I somehow am responsible for the issues that you're experiencing, when really what it is that you're experiencing issues because of your own idolatry. You have not returned to God. You have not made sure that I'm a shepherd from God, that these books are something that are of Him. You have not rent your heart to Him. He's your healer. I'm not your healer, and the books are not your healer. The books are going to teach you about the times you're living in, what is required, how we've been deceived, the personal accountability, the work that is required in order to bring yourself to God. All of it is intended to bring you to God. So if you then say, I don't have time to do a fast, I don't have time to return to God, and then you just start doing the books, now you're in idolatry because you think that what's going to heal you is the work of your hands or the expertise of someone you've placed as an idol. I'm not an idol, and I'm not an expert. What I am is a shepherd of God, shepherding you according to His word, His spirit, and my testimony. That's it. And I know that what I talk about in those books is true. I know that it works, but I also know that I can't return to God for you. I know that He is the only one who heals and seals you. So I received a message a short while ago that one of the things that a spouse of one of the people who has been doing this work said to them is, just stop doing it if it doesn't feel good. And I completely understand that advice. If something is making you worse, you're not getting better, either you need to stop doing it or you need to figure out what you're not doing right. I say this in multiple videos. I also talk about it in the book that you have to start with a fast. You cannot just jump into that work and think that you're going to figure it out by your carnality. If you're not attached to His spirit, don't expect Him to do anything, because He has told us in Isaiah 42:9 that He does not yield His praise or glory to anyone. He has told us in Exodus 15:26 that He is the Lord our healer. He expects certain things from us, and He has established that repeatedly in Scripture, that we have a bidirectional, a collaborative covenant with Him. There is responsibility that we have, and that's what I teach you in those books. But I am not God. You don't return to me. You have to return to Him. If you don't have time to do a fast, don't start those books. And I'm going to tell you what happens. You start the books, you start becoming aware of certain things. They're rising to the top, but you're not integrating them. You're not resolving them because you're not connected to His spirit. And now all of that spiritual attack is just sitting on you. Now you've raised it to the surface and it has nowhere to go. If you're not going to fully commit yourself to the work and do it correctly and in the right order, you will end up worse. And the reason you will end up worse is because you're raising all of that and it has nowhere to go. And I can promise you that all of the symptoms that you have are going to become more intense, not because of God and not because of the work, but because of your choice to not do the work in its fulfillment, and meaning to fully resolve what it is that's going on with you, first in personal accountability, then with God, because you have to get into your heart and spirit. If you try to go to Him first to heal all of this stuff for you and you haven't done your own work, you're going to go to Him in your flesh and you will not have done what you are required to do in order for Him to heal you. That does not mean that you don't return to Him in fasting. You have to do a fast. I've told you I don't work with anyone unless they do a fast. If they're not willing to do that, I'm not willing to work with them. So please heed the warnings that I give you repeatedly on these videos and in the books. Please. I am not offended in the least if you come to me and you ask me questions and you say, this part is not working for me, or this is what I'm experiencing. I'm not offended by that. I invite it. I ask you to do that because I don't want anyone to be suffering. But understand that what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to what you've done, and I'm going to be honest and direct with you about what needs to be done and what you neglected to hear about those instructions, that you must return to him. You cannot do this by setting up another human expert, another psychologist, another doctor, another, even using one of God's shepherds inappropriately. You can't do that. He does not play that game. You're not going to read these books and collect information. You have to live this out, and you have to be doing the work in these books in order to understand what I'm actually saying, in order to understand and for God to testify to what it is that I'm saying. But you're not even going to get to that point if you haven't done a fast, if you haven't returned to him and asked him, Lord, I want to heal. I believe that your word is practical for healing, that your word is the truth. Is this the right route for me to go? Now, one of the things that this person has said is that she was having difficulty. She was stuck on page 13 of the workbook at number 5. As we heal, layers of unresolved grief rise in our bodies, minds, and spirits to provide us with opportunities to see, know, and respond to our suffering in ways that we needed, but may not have received as children. These layers rise in many forms, such as memories, feelings, thoughts, dreams, physical manifestations, and metaphors, reenactments of trauma, and many other ways. When we do not view layers as opportunities, they can feel scary and we may feel victimized by them. We automatically attempt to avoid painful feelings through repression and denial, and our fear compels us to gain control by acting in ways that re-traumatize others and our inner child. When we understand that layers are opportunities provided and raised by God for our healing, we can begin to truly appreciate the way in which God has designed us to heal. And the next thing that she talked about is that she believes that grief is rising and that it feels scary. And I believe that that's exactly right. Now, understand, if you haven't returned to God and you're not doing these, activities, which is one of the things that, that there's an admission of that this person is not doing those activities. If you're not doing that and you're just keenly aware of your trauma and now you're just replaying it, now you're just in your flesh. You're just replaying the trauma. What do you expect to happen? And you have to understand what God's doing right now. He's raising this in you because you're wanting to heal. But if you're not doing anything with it, what do you expect to happen? It's just going to sit on you. And the devil is going to have that chink in your armor, that unresolved chink in your armor to slither in and attack. I know that this is a scary place. I go through it myself, not as frequently. I used to go through it quite a bit. When I wasn't resolving, but when a deep root is being dug out, I get into the same state that every single one of you gets into, in which I feel scared and I want to run and I want to distract and I start thinking about other things. And I've told you in the book, go, if that's the case and you need to go and do something cathartic or burn off some of that energy, decide that you're going to go take a walk. But don't decide that you're going to take a walk and then you're going to feel better and you're going to go back to ignoring it. What you need to do is take a walk and come back to the work. Decide that you're going to come back to the work with a fresh heart. Go on a walk, pray, talk to God. You are not alone in this work. I want you to know that. You can reach out to me. I am here to support you and help you, but I also am not going to set myself up as God. If you're not returning to him, there's nothing I can do. And please don't start these books until you have confirmation from him, because your confidence needs to be in him, not in me. The other thing that I want you to know is that spirit of fear is not going to be cast out. You will not feel his peace until you return to him. So you can't go into this work in that kind of compulsion. You have to return to him first. You have to be led by his spirit. The other thing that I want to tell you is if you're finding it difficult to make time to do this work, you need to take that up with him. I completely understand that feeling. It feels like a full-time job. And yet what I'm going to tell you is that when you truly heal in him and begin to heal in him, and he removes all of the distractions that you've been using in your life, all of those idols that you've been setting up, you are going to be surprised. You're going to be astounded, as a matter of fact, at just how much time you have when you're not living by idols. God has not told you that in repentance and rest is your salvation, in quietness and trust is your strength, but he expects you to be compelled and distracted and busy in every which direction. That's not possible. That's what we've made of our lives because of the idols that we've set up. To the person who wrote this email and anyone else who's feeling this way, I want you to know emphatically that I know what is going on based on this description. I am telling you the truth that you have to return to him, and he will cast that spirit out. That is a spirit that is causing this person to be afraid, and it is the result of idolatry. And I know that because if you don't have time to return to him, but you're reading a book that a person wrote, and believe me, I know that I'm of him. I know that I am a shepherd of him, and that what he did is true, and that those books are true. But this is what's being set up in your heart if that's what you're doing. If you are going to those books before you fasted and prayed and returned to him, who's your God? Who are you setting up? Because you're not setting him up as number one. Now, with that said, please make sure that you understand what a true fast is, that you understand that I'm not asking you to not eat for 3 days. What I am telling you is that a true fast is return to God. A true fast is sitting down and writing down what are the idols that you're placing before him, removing those idols, rending your heart to him, humbling yourself, listening to him, and shutting down the flesh. You have to be circumcised from the sinful flesh, disciplined in your mind and body, your physical flesh, and get into the heart and spirit and return to him. I also want you to know that there are some who do a fast and they experience results, but they're still lingering stuff, and they realize that I need to do another fast. That is perfectly right. That's absolutely true. I have to fast from things on a weekly basis, and I don't always do like a full drawn out fast. Sometimes I do a modified fast where I say, all right, I'm distracting myself too much with sewing. I'm going to go ahead and put the sewing machine and the serger on my other table, and I'm not going to be sewing for a day or two. And it's not that when I'm sewing, I'm not talking to him, but sometimes you got to set things aside to just be with him and to remove everything else. One other thing that I want to mention to you, especially for those of you who have spouses, you may have been setting up that spouse as an idol, and that spouse may have been taking care of you in ways you need to be responsible for. And I've addressed this in other videos where males will often set themselves up as an idol because they've been taught in the world that they're supposed to be the provider and protector, and then they step into areas where they can't possibly provide and protect. They set themselves up as God because their posture isn't right with God. Typically, this is just a traditional and typical dynamic between men and women. And oftentimes what happens with the woman is she's been taught that her husband's supposed to provide and protect, and particularly if she has issues with her original relationship with her father or feeling afraid or having trauma, she will set her husband up as an idol. And really, she's setting her husband up to feel like a failure. And wives will often do this in desperation, and then the husband responds in desperation, and you got a bad situation. And I got to tell you, those relationships are headed for disaster. It is not fair to do that. On either end, it is not fair. The husband infantilizes the wife. He also sets himself up for feelings of failure because he does not have the power to be God. He needs God himself. And the wife is being unfair and unaccountable and irresponsible doing that. If that's what you're doing, you need to take that up with God. It's not fair to require your spouse to take care of your unresolved suffering for you. He's got his own. This is idolatry, and it will prohibit your healing. God will not work through that. He will heal you of it if you are ready and willing to heal from it. But he is not going to give you what you're trying to get through your husband if you continue to do that. Many spouses do not even know a correct way to interact. They don't even know how to share spirituality because they're too busy trying to live spirituality through the other person by setting themselves up as God or setting the other person up as God. And it's wrong. So please heed these warnings that I'm sharing with you. I understand them. I really, really do. I am not standing in judgment. I've done these things myself. So I speak from personal experience, and I also speak from experience with regard to working with others and seeing them do the very same thing. These are schemes and tactics of the devil to set another person up or yourself as an idol. I've outlined how to do the work in the books. I suggest that the way that you start is by set aside a soul aligned for a little bit. Start working out of Heart Known series. Do the fast first. Make sure that God is letting you know that you're on the right track and that you should be using these books. Otherwise, you will set them up as an idol and me. And that's not something that I want, and he will not testify. Return to him first. Ask him about the books. Remove the idols in your life. Then, if he tells you to proceed, start with Heart Known series. Once you get the hang of Heart Known series, then you can add in a soul aligned. And you can read whatever it is that he tells you to read in a day. But I highly recommend doing at least one activity. I think one activity is reasonable in Heart Known series each day. Read the introduction. Make sure that you read that so that you understand. Anything that I've written in that book has not been for fluff. The instructions, the introduction, it's extremely important that you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it that way. And remember that anytime that you're feeling fear, you need to return to him. That is what the feeling of fear is. If you're feeling compulsive fear, like it's attacking you, that is a spirit. And you always have to start with returning to him. So that's always going to be the number one thing that you have to do. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, ever, send me an email, post a comment, use me correctly, and I will always respond to you. And I will always shepherd you according to his spirit, his word, and I will share my testimony with you. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.